According to my timekeeping devices, it is 1 o'clock Eastern, give or take. I appreciate those of you who don't mind me starting a couple seconds early. Somebody out there right now is upset. He started 3 seconds early. Art, Cyberdoc, Mark Miller in the house, along with Dan Boyd, Gene Ritchie, Alethea, good to see you, my friend. Lowell Riggs, I am. Stop Spam and MD Hofsty. From the home of Founders Brewer, Randall Spencer. Hey, Steve from Hope, Arkansas. I got to like those optimistically named towns. So I'm going to buzz down here to the bottom so I don't get too far behind things. Somebody said they're going to go get a glass full of DHMO, which is dihydrogen monoxide. There's a joke about that, about how dangerous it is because it kills so many people. Beware of dihydrogen monoxide, DHMO. Andrew Zupke. Hello, all you beautiful people. Again, optimistic. 858 Bill, sunny and balmy in Tucson at 106, which sounds more like a radio frequency than a temperature we ought to have. Padre, hello, all. MH08 says it's clear in 301 Kelvin in Denver. 301 Kelvin. Cyberdox's blue solo cup today. No, I do not coordinate the solo cups with the shirts. I don't. That's not a thing. It's a coincidence occasionally, but not a thing. USA Badass from Pollock Pines, California. Travis Cook, Pure Michigan. The Flatlander from Northern Vermont. Prodigal Stranger, wouldn't that be water? Well, yeah, it doesn't sound as dangerous when you call it water. But this dihydrogen monoxide, man, it kills people. It drowns people. Viento, you inspired me to become a tow truck driver. There you go. There's more money in it now than there was when I was doing it. I got paid minimum wage. Although I got to split the money on the tows I did overnight. Another story altogether. G Keyman 565. Hello, Steve Lehto, and all the rest here on Sunday. So Dan Boyd. So is that purple? I'm guessing that would be considered purple. Although I'm sure that there's ladies in the audience are going to go, no, that's a specific shade of purple. See, I don't know. It's purple. In most guys, we've got like a color palette of like 3. It's like red, blue, or yellow. I guess green and purple are real colors too, but we don't do shades. Cyberdox's DHMO killed his cell phone. See, it does that too. It destroys homes, cars. Chris Podesta said that could be lavender, and DePaul says maybe magenta. Mark Wilson, 67, pleasant day here in D.C. Padre says it's mauve. So does Mike Torello. Mauve. It's like taupe. Who knows what that is? No one knows. Yeah, Aaron Freeman says DHMO is killing people in Texas, and that's a wild story because we tend to think of Texas as being, dry, hot, and humid, and there's flooding, and it's like wow. I bet extreme weather anywhere can cause problems, but unbelievable. Andrew Zupke, could you go into federal court in Ohio or just Michigan? I'm only licensed in Michigan. I'm admitted both in eastern and western districts of federal court in Michigan. If an appeal went up to the 6th Circuit, I could do that also, but I do not practice law in Ohio. What else says chartreuse? Chartreuse. Oh boy. Josh Jagminas, hey, been so busy, haven't been able to catch a stream. How is everybody? Thank you for checking in. I love seeing the names that are familiar. Going, oh, that's right. Yeah, it's been a little while. Thank you for dropping by. Mike Lackner, you can learn to do tricks with the solo cups. I've seen guys on YouTube teaching how to do magic tricks, like with the red balls, the cups and balls, that kind of thing. That's not one I know how to do, though. Cyberdoc says, yeah, like the 3-card Monty with the solo cups. Fatty Butterpants, 50 Shades of Purple. I mean, there are people out there who can distinguish those kinds of things, but I always like to joke about you go to Home Depot to look at white paint. You want to buy white paint? There's like 75 shades just by Ralph Lauren. White paint. Can't I just get white? No. Do you want eggshell white? Do you want ivory white? And then there's a bunch of made up stuff, and you're like, what? Okay. Andrew Zupke, I didn't know if the law allowed you to go into federal in other states. No. Generally, you're licensed by state, and then you can go into the federal court in your state if you get admitted there. And there's different rules for that. But federal courts do apply the state law in the areas they sit on many things. And then the procedure stays the same. And there's a thing called the Erie Doctrine, which nobody understands, named after Lake Erie. Erie, not Eery. Erie Doctrine, and it's not named as the lake, but the word comes from that. Anyway, my point is that without knowing the state law where the federal court sits, it wouldn't help you that much. Agent Ned, thanks for talking about the AI Hertz issue. My mother learned a lot from you about it. What about you? You learned nothing? Or are we worried more about our parents? Don't get me wrong. Prodigal Stranger, titanium white. Alabaster white, Cyberdoc. No, seriously. If you wanna get annoyed, go shop with somebody for paint colors at Home Depot, and go with somebody who actually cares. Because I've actually gone there like, I just want to buy a gallon of white paint. No, we got to find the right shade of white. Okay, I got a question. What's the difference between alabaster white from Ralph Lauren and the snowstorm white by Bear? And it's like they both look like white. No. There's a whole different thing. David Zerdnansky says the human eye can distinguish about 16,000 different shades of hue. But of course, that gets us down to, but is it really going to make a difference if I use this hue versus that hue or shade? And no. Duncan Campbell says, morning, Steve. I hope you're having a good Sunday. As a guy, I think that is mauve or a light magenta. Tornado James, I like my cactus gray Ford Ranger. Do cactuses come in gray? The cactuses were green unless they flowered. Art S. Lead white. Richard Terhune says black and white photography, of course, has three colors, black, white, and gray, and all the shades in between. Paul Harris does point out that white cars can be difficult to color match when you're trying to repair them. That's a whole different thing, because you can paint a car one color and park it outdoors and have an identically painted car from the factory that is stored in a garage. And 10 years later, park them side by side, and they look completely different in terms of the shades of color. And I know that because I had a green Explorer that spent most of his life parked outdoors. And then I got a same year, same color that had been kept indoors. And they are so different when I parked them next to each other. People said, well, those aren't the same color. I'm like, yes, they are. At least according to the build sheets, they were. I believe it's called Estate Green. Estate Green. Estate. Fast Eddie says, I thought red was the hardest color to match. I suspect this is one of those things that just depends on your take on it. William Crotty, I love your talks. I listen while I do lawn work on the weekends. Thank you. I appreciate it. Hey, anything I can do. By the way, you don't have to watch the videos. You can listen to them. And I hate to tell people this, but my audio is always available on iTunes as a podcast, and you can actually gear them up and let them go in sequence. But yeah, I think I've probably got 30 or 40,000 listeners through all the various different podcast outlets out there, because I started doing that before I was doing videos on YouTube. Jay Klein says, I've got two gray cars. One is more gray than the other. But is it more gray as it gets away from white or away from black? MHOA, does color matching really matter on a 10-year-old car? Well, if you're wanting to fix it and make it look like it wasn't messed up, yeah. David Peterson, I mean, divorces were caused by married couples shopping for paint. Quite a few. I think Home Depot and IKEA have been the location where more people looked at the other partner and said, how did I get hitched to this person? So Josh says there was no stream a few weeks ago for book editing. Any update on that? I'm not sure what you're asking. No stream a few weeks ago for book editing. JDG says, is the podcast available on iTunes? Yes. Is it only available on iTunes? No, it's available all over the place. Podbean and Google Play and whatever else. Now somebody says there's something crawling up the wall behind me. Is there? I don't see anything crawling up the wall. I foolishly am going to turn, and I see nothing. Victor Swenson, your laugh is contagious. Thank you. William Crotty, does the arbitration from a dealership mean you give up the right to the lemon laws? If it's written into the purchase agreement with the dealership, it shouldn't, because the lemon law speaks to the manufacturer. If you're talking about the arbitration clause buried in an employee purchase document from the manufacturer, it might, depending on the state you're in. And that does vary from state to state. Padre, don't forget about Petty Blue. Petty Blue. It's interesting because the Petty family has used that blue color for a long, long time. And I believe they simply bought blue paint and mixed it with white and got a shade they liked, and they just remembered the formula. Okay. Steve G, I use spot remover on my dog. Now I can't find him. Pretty sure. Is it a Stephen Wright joke? I'm pretty sure I've heard that before. But Andrew Servia, hi, Steve. Nice to see you live. I really enjoy your videos. You do a great job. Thanks, man. Oh, Jay Reader says, is your shirt Petty Blue? No, it's this is a little bluer. I'm no good with the colors. Paul Harris, if you get employee pricing from a dealership, are you bound by the employee purchase rules? Well, it depends on if you're actually getting an employee pricing or if it's simply them giving you the same price. Because employee pricing generally is a discount that General Motors applies and grants to a dealership to use with you. So, Fat Blue, shocking blue. Like I'm your Venus. Midwesterner says, I think your shirt is heathered turquoise. Heathered, which of course is a reference to the striations. Is that the right word? It could be. Devin Ruckus, how many Vin Wiki stories did you record on your last trip? I'm guessing 9 or 10. I lost track. I had written down 8, but then he asked me some follow-up questions. And I don't know if he's going to edit those as a single one or double it up. We'll see. I think we're going to see one coming up this upcoming week. There are indications. Chris Badisa says this is a Pantone color matching book. Yeah, and people who worked in graphic arts back in the old days would actually have that book and then flip through it to get the exact color of something. And you'll often see a description of like a trademark. And they'll say like the IBM trademark is this lettering in this font, if it is one, along with this color from the book. David Zaranansky, is Heather here? No, I don't believe she'll be here. I believe she's working again today, and for that she's apologized. She's told me that she's always working, and she'd love to be here if she could be. Lowell Riggs AM says someone said Blazing Saddles 2, but there is no such sequel planned. I can tell you that I've heard rumors that there's a Sisu 2 coming. Apparently, they just won't leave that guy alone. Andrew Zubke, out of curiosity, how long does it take to go from recording a video to posting it on YouTube? For me, I hope you don't think my videos are heavily edited. Um, my videos are usually shot, edited, and uploaded within a couple hours, meaning that if I shoot it this morning, it can be up that day, and they often are. I like to post them a little bit further back so that YouTube can process them. I've had a couple of videos I rushed to put up, and they're still processing. And I got some complaints. People going, "Hey, Steve, this video is up, but it's only available in like the pixels that look like from they're from MySpace or something." So I like to have them up a little bit in advance to do that. But generally speaking, they are shot, edited, uploaded um, from the beginning of the shooting to the end of the upload. It can be done in an hour. So, but again, I don't do a lot of editing, as you might guess. Um, uh, I know people who say that they put an hour of editing into every minute of a video, and I can't imagine what they're doing. But oh, hello, it's me from Ontario, Canada, one of my favorite places. In fact, I was just in Canada. I just realized this. I've been to Canada for two different shows this year. I saw Jay Leno performing at the Coliseum. And then just a couple nights ago, I saw the Psychedelic Furs performing live at the Coliseum also. I had front row seats. Weirdly, I posted a video where I reviewed a concert where I went to the Royal Music Theater to see orchestral maneuvers in the dark. And someone responded to that and said, "I can't believe you paid all that money just to see someone lip sync." Who said anything about lip syncing? Like, what? Oh, boy. William Crotty, can a dealership sell a new car that has a major safety recall and not let the buyer take it until it's fixed? I thought NHTSA prohibited that. My understanding is that NHTSA has required the dealers to hang on to the cars until they're fixed with the safety recall. The question is, what happens if they sell one that the recall is not available yet on? I've not seen that before, though. Conzilla, MySpace. Wow, I haven't heard that word for over a decade. Yeah, MySpace is shorthand for outdated stuff. That and GeoCities. DT254, afternoon, Steve. I pity the fool. What's one band you've never seen in person but wish you had? Oingo Boingo, without question. Just boom, right there. Sadly, Oingo Boingo is not well known east of the Rockies, but they were huge in California. They're mainly known outside of California for Weird Science, but Dead Man's Party is classic. Likewise, Light at the End of the Tunnel is amazing, and they're fabulous. Most people now would know that Danny Elfman does music for movies and TV shows. He did the themes of The Simpsons, for which he probably makes more money than he ever made as a member of the band. But they broke up largely because Danny Elfman has suffered, he says, hearing damage. And his doctors have told him, stop performing live. You're going to go deaf. He's like, I can't afford to go deaf. But they did some huge shows in the late 80s and early 90s, including a farewell show. But hey, every band's done farewell shows. But I never got a chance to see them live. And I mean, you can go on YouTube and find a video of them live and of their farewell show at the Hollywood Bowl. And an amazing band live. Russell Hall says they're well known nationwide. Oingo Boingo. I mention them. People go, what? Who? Huh? So, oh God, Lowell Riggs, I am Lycos and Hotbot. Dan Boyd says, yeah, and they changed their name to just Boingo. Yeah, that's one of those things that didn't quite take as far as I'm concerned. Midwesterner, Alan Parsons. I've seen Alan Parsons, though. Alan Parsons put in a fabulous show. Saw at the Royal Music Theater. I sat in the fifth row for that one. Andrew Zupke, Jimi Hendrix. I think we're limited to reality here because Jimmy's passed away for a few years now. Angela and Band, Grand Funk. I only laugh because they're from Michigan. And the Prodigal Stranger, The Who, has made a career out of farewell shows. 858 Bill says, saw Arlo Guthrie at a small theater in Austin. I've never seen Arlo. He plays the Calumet Theater in Michigan from time to time. Yeah, Fatima Butterpan says, back to school, Oingo Boingo made a cameo at the dorm party that Ronnie Dangerfield was throwing. And they do Dead Man's Party. That's a song they do in that uh, scene. Dan Boyd, I got to see The Clash. The Clash is one of those bands that briefly you could have seen them. I think, didn't they warm up for the Rolling Stones one tour? And then they also played like a couple big shows at like Yankee Stadium and so on. But Conzilla, how often do you take leisure rides in your cars in the summer? Well, if it's nice out, I take the Cobra out 3 or 4 times a week. Yesterday was nice out, but I was going someplace. I had to park the car out of sight. So I actually drove my Jeep Wrangler with the top down. I worry about leaving the Cobra unattended where I can't see it for very long. It's an open car. I worry about it. Buen Luck, I'm in Pennsylvania and I've heard of Oingo Boingo, but that's not the point. It's not whether you've heard of them. How many of their songs have you actually heard like on the radio? So that's a thing. Victor Swenson, Jay Giles. Yeah, I like Jay Giles a lot. I've never seen them live, but that's there's a bunch of bands out there that I like. I just never seen them. Russell Hall, Boingo were one of the major bands in the 80s. I don't think they're that obscure. We can argue these things all day long, but how many top 40 hits did they have? How many of their songs got radio airplay on actual radio stations as opposed to like college radio or the obscure new wave stations? Like KROQ Los Angeles played the heck out of them, but then again, that's in Los Angeles, and also they're playing new music. So Russell Hall, they had a ton of hit songs, Oh boy, going to the phones, and unlike Phil. Let's go to the phones. Oingo Boingo. Discography. Oh, they don't actually list it. Because quite often you can look it up and it'll tell you how many songs they had that charted. So I got to do it this way. Top 40, Oingo Boingo. Complete history. Weird Science was number 45. Just Another Day, number 85. Bingo. So 0 songs in the top 40. So don't tell me how popular they were. I love the band, but they were not popular in the sense. Obvious Captain says Creedence Clearwater Revival never had a number 1, but they had a stack of number 2s. They did. They actually had a bunch of songs in the top 40s. So that's an important distinction. But you have to understand, if a song gets sung into the top 40, especially during the Casey Kasem days, okay, that means that song got played in every market in North America as well as overseas, Armed Forces Radio, and the song got exposed to people if it simply made it in the top 40. If a band never made the top 40, there were entire markets that never, ever played their music. And so that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about how popular a band is. Leanne says, I saw the Tubes. I saw the Tubes play in Ann Arbor during the backwards completion principle era. Talk to you later. But that's a band that had a brief moment of just huge popularity on rock and roll radio, and it kind of faded away. Vinny Sluga's mother's birthday is Wednesday. Happy birthday, Annie Sluga, a couple days in advance. Carl's Corner, did I miss anything? Of course not. The implication is there that there'd be something here to miss. Oh, Kunzilla, is there a concert or show that you are looking forward the most within this year? Because I've already seen, I think, 4 shows this year. I've got 8 or 9 more lined up. I'm going to see Blue October in the fall, but I love them. I've seen them many, many times. I'm not quite sure, but I've got a bunch lined up. Lewis Browning says the B-52s with Devo at Pine Knob. I'm familiar with that show coming up. I have not bought tickets. I'm not a huge B-52s fan. I like a couple of their more obscure songs, which I don't know if they'll do. Give Me Back My Man and Heavy Equipment. With my luck, they won't do them. So Juanito Hernandez says you can pick me up Home Depot, Southfield Road. I'd be there, ready for work anytime you need. Oh. Conzilla, I really wish I could see a Metallica show. Leon saw the Tubes play with Iggy Pop. Yeah, Iggy Pop's another guy from Michigan. A lot of people don't know that. That guy's for a guy who looks so rough, he's in remarkably good condition. Oh yeah, Free King Awesome points out, don't forget about the Tubes. She's a beauty. David Phillips, the beer wash out of your sock. Somebody actually claims that I committed a huge faux pas by wearing socks with my shoes and shorts at a show because I mentioned that somebody spilled beer on my leg, but I wasn't wearing long pants, so it got on my skin, which I wiped it off pretty quickly, but it ran down my leg and got into my sock. And I wasn't wearing like knee-high athletic socks and sandals. I was wearing the short socks that you wear with shoes, so your shoes don't get sweaty and gross. But hey, you do you. Leon Anderson, the Royal Music Theater. Yeah, that's where I saw this show with the orchestral maneuvers in the dark. It's a fabulous venue, but this show is general admission, which kind of it was a packed show and very, very hot. I've seen great shows there. I've seen some iffy shows. OMD was good. They were really good. I saw Alan Parsons there. I've seen Gary Newman there. I saw Ministry there. So Padre Brownsville Station, another band from Michigan, smoking in the boys' room. Carl's Corner, you smell like beer. Have you been drinking? I've always wanted a cop to pull me out of a car and have me do some sobriety tests. I think I'd fail them on purpose just so I could blow zeros on the breathalyzer. And I've had people go, Steve, you understand? It's possible to blow non-zeros. Oh, I've got a client who was arrested doing something really crazy in a car. Cop had him blow a breathalyzer, blew zeros. And that was a fun police report. And the cop actually told me, and he also told my client, I've never had someone blow zeros, ever. Now you have. Prodigal Stranger says, I always wear over the calf black socks and my Jesus sandals. No. You wear the really tall white athletic socks with a stripe around that you wore in gym. Leon, I drove a tow truck for 17 in Rochester Shell. When were you driving for the mobile station? I was driving the mobile station in Birmingham in 1981, 2, and 3, right around there. So it was a while ago. Wade Pittenger says plaid shorts, dress shoes with socks, metal detecting on the beach while ogling the women. And you got to be wearing the headphones, the big, heavy headphones, too. I pity the fool. If you had a chance to do music law for your favorite band, would you? You know, if I was a younger man and wanted to change the angle of my profession, probably. But at my current state in life, I wouldn't be able to help anybody that much. Half of the law is knowing what the law is. The other half is knowing what the industry is. I don't know what the industry standards are for contracts and so on. Daniel Kester, if someone spilled beer on your leg, could that be considered alcohol abuse? Better yet, is it assault and battery? Because it is an unwanted touching, so it'd be a battery of some sort. But the question is, what's the harm? Bill McMahon, I would love to see Dayupers in concert. I don't think they're touring. Did they ever tour? I mean, I know they've got a huge cult following. They've got their tourist trap. They're outside of Marquette, but I didn't know if they toured. I don't know if they actually did that. Cyberdoc saw someone wearing those knee-high white tube socks with the stripe on top the other day. They're perfectly good socks. Roxon found something funny, but Taco Cat, what's a typical lunch when you're at the office? Well, it depends. I'm not making this up. If factor meals are in my refrigerator, I do the factor meals all the time. Factor meals, 2 minutes, I'm eating. But I do actually I eat okay. But it really depends. Hey, the prodigal stranger guessed the factor meal. Mark Miller, intent might be hard to establish. The question is intent necessary? Because if I punched you in the back of the head but say I didn't mean to, does that mean you didn't get injured? It might change whether it's punitive damages and also might change the criminal aspect. But don't forget, there's a criminal aspect and a civil aspect. I can sue you for battery, whether or not you get arrested for it or charged. Scott Summers saw the Upers in Tawas. Tawas is up here, up around the Bay of Saginaw, or Saginaw Bay as they call it. Yeah, Deanna Kester says he was informed that the Canadian robot lady is working today. She likely won't be joining us, and that is correct. Victor Swenson, thanks for the few hearty chuckles. Have a great day, man. Peace. I appreciate that. JJ, what's the Latin on the sign out screen? I shouldn't tell you. For the longest time, it said, beware of low flying owls. And then whenever I make not a mistake, but I want to put a clarification on the video, I'll replace that with something that says, yes, I know this, or whatever. But then when I go back, I'd retype it. And I decided to do it, but this time I did it in Latin. So it's not only in Latin, it's in italics. It's italicized to indicate that it is, in fact, in a foreign language. But it is in Latin. And it's Latin for beware of low flying owls. Because, yes, they've got Latin for everything. Tony Pellegrino calls out that Ozzy finally says goodbye. He had his last show on Saturday. I saw some posts about that. And he's a guy, if you hear him talk, you're like, how is this guy still alive? Oh. DePaul, why the change to Latin? I change it up from time to time. Just trying to make things interesting. Took 3 days before anybody commented, as far as I know. Angela, anybody been to a Frank Zappa concert? No. He's been gone a little while too. One of the most fascinating guys, though, in not just music, just around back in the day. Idris Taylor's Latin discriminates against groundhogs. I left the groundhogs off, and I forgot if I translated badly because I took it in English and had it translated to Latin. And then, just to make sure my math was correct, I took the Latin and translated it back into English, and it worked. So that, okay, that's good. And I think when I put groundhogs in it, it screwed things up. And I could have tried like whistle pigs or woodchucks or any of their other names, but I just simply went with the owls. Michael Hoyland says, all of my messages are in italics since I'm Danish, so English is a foreign language. But your English, my friend, is quite good, so there you go. David Zaranansky says, beware of low-flying woodchucks. Well, clearly, if they've achieved flight, I'm in trouble. Bill A. DFW. Hi, it's Steve from DFW. Josh, I'd like to call groundhogs land beavers. Land beavers. Although beavers do spend quite a bit of time on land. Kurt Wetzel, is there a way to sample factor meals? Try 2 or 3 to see if I like them. I don't want bulk meals. I don't care for them. I believe you can do a minimum order of 4. I believe. I've got an ad going up this week, and I seem to recall that they'll do 4. And so you can get a big discount on your original order and just order, I think, 4 and see what happens. Selguko says busy being, but I hear again, or busy Ben? Past tense of be? I don't know. Andrew Zupke, I swear it takes months for the people at work to know anything new about me. What I like is when you change something major like your hairstyle or something and nobody notices, and then they go, have you lost weight? Really? Getting a haircut caused me to lose weight? I didn't think so. Oh. Yoda Beast, my former newspaper editor, has an albino groundhog living under his shed. It's quite striking. Wow. I've never heard of such a thing. I pity the fool about hosting Coyote versus Acme. We're still looking into it because the movie's not going to get released till next year. So they've all said it is way too far out to start planning anything. David Peterson, has anybody else thought that the cows staring at you are quietly judging you? Of course they are. Look at that man. He's wearing socks with shoes. And I go, yeah, someday you're going to be hamburger. Oh, boy. I had a deer right outside my window about an hour ago, and it was hunkered down, and I thought maybe it was a baby, but it looked too big. And I was looking at it like, why are you doing that? And it was just sitting there, and all of a sudden it got up and walked away, and I'm like, that's weird. So Mark Miller says these people don't watch, but congratulations, my nephew, for graduating college, and happy birthday to my sister-in-law. That's cool. It is graduation season. Yeah, I meant socks with shoes and shorts. Cyberdoc. Jerry Dodge checking in from Kalamazoo. Kalamazoo. Duck Redbeard reminds us that moose bites can be pretty nasty. I believe a moose bit my sister once. I think I had the Canadian robot lady say that at the end of a video, and people were like, "What?" And half the world gets, and the other half is like, "Huh?" Yeah, Andrew Zupke, the Coyote versus Acme movie sounds interesting. And I heard leaked reviews that claimed it was good, but they still thought, well, let's just kill it for bookkeeping purposes, tax reasons. And they've now said they're going to release it. Somebody's bought it. It'll happen, but sometime next year. Midwesterner, I'm back. My husband called from the hospital. Is everything okay? Daniel Kester, question about history. Why do we celebrate the signing of the Declaration being signed when only one delegate signed when the rest signed on August 2nd and the king got it in October? It's dated. If you look at the original, it says, blah, 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 and doesn't it say July 4th right on it? Because that's how we are as Americans. We just simply respond to the most obvious thing. Hang on. Declaration of Independence. Images. Yeah, and so there's the Declaration of Independence. And if you blow it up, it says July 4th, 1776. And so that's the most obvious date to go off of. Oh, so Josh sent me an email. listener, Josh, and said something about book editing. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I just didn't understand the question as phrased. So he wrote and said, hi, Steve. I was referring to June 15th, which would be like 3 weeks ago. You made a Facebook post saying no stream for last minute book editing. And it was the Turban Car chapters you were adding. How's that going? Oh, it's done. I think I mentioned that actually, probably in a live stream, but the final stuff was turned in. But unfortunately, the way they work, the book itself will get published in the fall, probably around September. There's some other things in your email which I'll respond to in writing later on. So I'm not ignoring you from that point. Jay Klein's got a family of red-tailed hawks in his neighbor's tree. Been watching them for the past few weeks. Yeah, I love red-tailed hawks. They're all over Michigan. You often see them sitting in trees, watching along the sides of highways, and occasionally you see them soaring, although they don't soar as much as the vultures do, seemingly. Midwesterner is losing his leg this week. Sorry to hear that. Hang in there. Mike E. Kim, which of course is Mike E. Kim backwards. Interesting conversation. Love your channel. Jerry Dodge, remember having to memorize the preamble to the Constitution back in elementary school. Still know it today. And of course, don't forget all the times that people had to memorize the Gettysburg Address. 4 score. Oh, boy. MD Hofsty says September 3rd is the signing of the Treaty of Paris, but it was not ratified by the Continental Congress till January 14th of 84. Okay, so which day do you celebrate it on? The September 3rd or the January 14th? Tiger Man, wasn't one of the original copies sent to the states of the Declaration found taped to the back of a piece of art found in a yard sale? Was it the Declaration of Independence or Constitution? But I remember hearing about that because there was a bunch of those that they made copies of, and they sent the copies out long before they had Xerox machines or mimeograph. And one of them got found at a yard sale. And they always knew that they were out there because they knew how many got made and they knew how many were accounted for. And the same thing happened with the Magna Carta. Let's see if that triggers anybody. Michael Holland says, did you hear that Michael Madsen passed away the other day, actor of Reservoir Dogs, Kill Bill, and Hateful Eight? Yes, I did, but I was not that familiar with his work. So he's one of those people that when they said that, I had to go look him up. I'm like, oh, sorry to hear. Anytime someone younger than me passes away, it causes me to do the old double take. James Milano's checking in from Puebla. Opinion Rat says, if you want to memorize the preamble to the Constitution, just listen to Schoolhouse Rock video about it until it plays on an endless loop in your head. At that point, you ain't never forgetting it. Prodigal stranger. Steve, there's no the in Magna Carta. And if I said, yeah, I'm referring to Magna Carta, people go, referring to the Magna Carta? So. Old Paint 71 says it was the Declaration of Independence found behind a painting purchased for $4. Devin Ruckus ran into a guy at the Peterson Museum that was very insistent on pronouncing the turban car wrong. So, here's the thing. As I pointed out repeatedly, if you look in the dictionary, there's 2 pronunciations. So it can be turban or turbine. But the people who worked in the program all called them turban cars. And, there's a video that came out a couple of years ago. I'm in it. And they interview all these people familiar with the program, who worked in the program, who familiar with the cars. And not once does anybody in the entire video say turbine, turbine. And yet when I say turbine car, people go, do you wear it on your head? Because that's what turbine means. And dictionaries are your friend. So Jones man, 08. How often are you getting the Viper on the road this summer? I've had it on a couple times. I hate to say this, but because I've got the Cobra, if it's nice driving weather, I often go, I'll take the Cobra. Longer trips of the chance of rain. I don't want to drive the Viper in the rain, but if there's a chance of rain, I go, well, I wouldn't want to, if I get caught in one, it's going to be the Viper, right? Steve G says, how many copies of the Rosetta Stone? Are you joking or are you serious? Because believe it or not, there's more than one. And that's the interesting thing is that the Rosetta Stone, I believe, was something that I forgot what exactly the reign of who it was, the monarch who was in charge at that time, wanted these notices sent out in several languages. As they sent it out in several languages. And when they found the Rosetta Stone and decrypted it, they realized how important it was to our understanding of the past. But they later found that there was more of them out there. So there actually were more than one. Chris Podesta says OED. And by the way, I actually had somebody get mad at me because I said, as you know, I've got OEDs here. And I pointed behind me and somebody goes, Steve, you've got volumes of the OED, not OEDs, plural. I have two OEDs. I've got the compact version in 2 and the expanded version in 20. I've got OEDs, plural. I wish people would just spend less time trying to correct things. Didn't Ed Bolian say turbine? He probably did. But again, there's nothing wrong with it. There's a distinction between being wrong or being alternatively correct. Oh boy. Dan Boyd, turbine. Yeah, turbine I think would be unacceptable. Tom Rogers. What are the original Cobras going for now? I've seen them go for millions. So yeah, Art S reminds me about the Harvard Magna Carta, and the Magna Carta is interesting because it went through several different phases, and depending on which generation you've got, there are some things that were added or removed or whatever, and so there was not just one, there were several, and some are rarer than others. So. Thomas Caldwell, if I send you a link to a story at your email and you don't use it, is my email marked as spam? No, it just means I didn't use it. Sent a link about the golden toilet. Yeah, I got several people who suggested that story to me, but I just didn't. It's so hard for me to tell sometimes which stories will do well and which stories do not. And I try to pick the ones I think will do well. And that struck me as one that I found interesting, but I didn't think it would do well as a video, so I simply didn't do it. But I remember seeing your email and a couple others come across about that, and I made a mental note that I might want to do that. So, but yeah, no. The way you get marked as spam in my incoming email box is if you send me spam. So I'll go to the phone right now. I'm going to open up my email and open up the spam folder, and boom, hey, there's a spam. Hey, I'm still waiting for your reply. Please let me know if you're interested in my SEO services. Can I send you a price and quote? No question mark. Thanks, Zoe. And directly below that, hey, I checked your website. You have an impressive site, but ranking is not good on Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Bing? Would you like to optimize your site? I will be happy to share with you our pricing and proposals if you are. Can I send you a price and quote? Regards, Zoe. And so allegedly the first email was sent a month ago. The second one was sent like 5 minutes ago. But that's the only thing in my spam folder right now. But yeah, no, just don't send me spam and you won't wind up in the spam folder. Oh boy. Two left thumbs have got the compact OED. When I bought it, I didn't need the magnifying glass. Now I need it, can't find it. Ooh, see, I've got an OED compact and it's supposed to come in a case and the magnifying glass fits on top of the case. Somebody lost the case, but I still have the books and the magnifying glass. It comes this really cool square magnifying glass. You can hold up and look at things really, really well. But that's why I've got the set on the set of OEDs on my set. Because I was joking one day, I looked something up in the OED with the magnifying glass and said, "Here I am using a magnifying glass like an animal because nobody loves me." And a viewer, Kevin, and his wife sent me a note. Steve, we're sending you a set of OEDs, just so you know. But I guess it would be a set of the OED, not plural, because it was simply one. But anywho, SKS Hugo, I'm tempted to send Steve a picture of a can of Spam. I've got a can of Spam on my set right there. You just can't see it from this angle, but it's there. Leanne, one of my duties for an attorney was checking the spam folder. Found legit there often. Oh, I've heard horror stories. That's why I handle my own email. I literally do not have anybody else handle my email specifically for that reason, because there might be stuff in there. Devin Ruckus, polished copper-bodied Cobra, sold for $9.90 at Meekum. I wonder if it could have sold for more if it hadn't been copper-bodied. It was really interesting. Somebody had a Cobra made with a copper body, but I guess $9.90 is a good price because that is a replica. But the body was polished copper. But among other things, you couldn't get it wet, dirty, or you couldn't touch it because the oil from your skin would screw the copper up. Jay Klein, but Steve, I've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty. Jerry Dodge, I've got a magnifying glass with a ring light around it to use for soldering and electronics. I was talking to somebody yesterday. They go, "Yeah, I fixed my refrigerator." I said, "How'd you do that?" And they said, "Oh, I pulled the circuit board out and I soldered in some new resistors or something." Like, you soldered them in? Like, do you do Heathkit? I just did not know that. JR, have you got the age where you're using magnifying glasses now? Well, these right here are reading glasses, and I think they're 1.25. So slightly. I can read right now without these, but I strain a little bit. Now, what are you gonna do? Tyler Durden, I'm here. Late, but here. Jason Brindamauer, that copper Cobra looks sweet, but it looks fake. You know, it's one of those things where you're looking at it going, that's, and you know, because your first thought is, do they wrap it? Or what do they use to paint it? You go, oh wait, wow. It's literally just polished copper. Jones man, are the Detroit Tigers for real this year? Yes, they are. They are good. I'm blown away. You never know. The baseball is such a weird sport. It's such a weird sport because sometimes the distinctions between teams are so minor, you know. And plus, you've got to have like a full rotation of starters and a full rotation of closers and guys who can hit, and then the people who hit have got to be able to hit at the correct times. And it used to be you look at ERA and batting averages. It's all you ever looked at. Now, of course, they've got all kinds of stats they can look at. And you discover that, you know, somebody who you know, is good at driving and runs, you know, in other words, hitting with people on base. And so I'll admit I was not following them that much, and people started talking, going, "Oh my gosh, look at what they're doing." And I've been watching them. In fact, I watched part of their game day before yesterday, quite a bit of it. So 858 Bill, if you had the opportunity, would you get a Cobra Daytona coupe? You mean the hard top where it's enclosed? Probably not. I have to imagine it's cramped in there. I'm 6'2". I've got a hard time getting into my Viper, and even getting in and out of my Cobra does look silly at times. People see me climbing out of my Cobra and they think, "Oh, that poor guy." There's something wrong with him, isn't there? Because in the Cobra, you can't lean on the door. The door has got virtually no structural value at all. And so if you lean on the door, you'll bust the door off or damage the door. Blue Unicorn was here. Says, I have a question. Did you know how awesome I think you are? If not, you do now. It's true. I did not know that before, but thank you for checking in. But that was not necessary. You could just check in and say hello and ask a silly question like everybody else. Aaron, what about the Lions? Well, the Lions are to football what Lucy was to Charlie Brown, yanking away the football, because the Lions occasionally will hint that they might be good, and they fall apart every single year, either right before or during the playoffs. And I'm talking about fall apart like the wheels coming off of a soapbox derby racer. Bad. Jones Man '08 says it's still early before the All-Star game. Lots of time left, but hope they keep it up. I think they're going to do well through the end of the season. The biggest question I have is always, postseason. We'll see. Aaron's checking in from Flint, Lead City. Late to the show, but checking in. I appreciate that. Glenn Lagos says the future is so bright I have to wear shades or sunglasses. Take your pick. Jerry Dodge, baseball may be boring, but have you ever tried watching golf? Yeah, something. It's here's the thing. I grew up playing baseball. I loved baseball as a little kid. I absolutely loved baseball. I used to listen to them on WJR. I remember getting a radio in elementary school so I could listen to Tiger baseball games. And I played Little League baseball. I loved playing catch. I loved going to just baseball time with a few of my friends, just hitting balls. And I kind of drifted away from it as an adult. But yeah, no, baseball to me is not as fun to watch as say a college football. But I do watch it occasionally and understand it. I understand it very well. But yeah, golf. I'm not a golfer. So golfing does nothing for me, but I don't blame people who watch it because I'm just not a golfer. But I can tell you that back when Tiger Woods was hot, there were times where it was fun to watch just because what he was doing. But that was a while ago. Daniel Kester, if I were to visit you, would I be able to get rides in your Viper and Cobra? I'll make sure it's not likely to rain. So you can control the rain, my friend? I didn't know that. Um, I give people rides in my cars all the time. I've had people walk up to me at a car show and go, "Hey, nice car. You want to go for a ride?" Sure. That's what it's for. A YouTube commenter says, "Hey, Steve, you used to have a Thai license plate on the set. My wife is Thai. You like Thai? I like shirt." The Simpsons joke. I was wondering the story behind it. Yeah, I was told by several people that it said Lehto is law in Thai, or as close as you could get. But there's some debate about that. It's amongst my license plates. I haven't been shuffling the license plates as often as I used to, but it'll probably wind up back on there one of these days. Lewis Browning, 1969 Ford Mustang Shelby GT 500 convertible with the correct 428 engine, factory 4-speed, $200,000. That doesn't surprise me at all. I like that year. I like that year convertible. The Shelby convertible Mustangs were really cool. Really cool. Oh, YouTube says my wife confirmed the translation. Good. Because I actually had several people who didn't speak Thai go, well, I asked somebody, and they said it was off, which means they probably described it or something. I don't know. Steve, good afternoon, Steve. This is my first time on a live chat with you. I enjoy the live shows. But Steve, could you say people say Steve just once? Oh boy. L Law 1 says, Iris says, don't diss Michigan. Did somebody diss Michigan up here? Did I miss something? I didn't see it. Huh. Or is that are you saying that's rule number 1? Jerry Dodge says his boss lawyer in Kentucky has a license plate says LITIG8 litigate. LITIG8 litigate. Yeah, I've seen variations on that one. If I'm on I-75 heading someplace and I got to jump off and get fast food, it's one thing. Takeout, I've got a couple Thai places near me that do really, really well. I like Thai food. Got a Chinese place, does good Chinese. And of course, I like pizza. And I've got a couple places that are independents near me that are not like, God, I don't know when the last time I had Little Caesars was or Domino's. Other than someone else buying it, haven't had those in a long time. I'm talking about a long, long time. Tiger Man 99515. What's the fastest you've ever been in a car? Notice the verb been, not driven in a car. The fastest you've ever been in a car. A little north of 150 a couple times. But I would never break the law because that would be bad. JR, now that you've got the Jeep, any plans to add any more vehicles? If so, what car would you like to add? I'm thinking, and I'm not thinking that hard about it, but I'm thinking about building a clone Daytona, getting a 69 Dodge Charger that's in rough shape and turning it into a Daytona. Jones, man, do you like Detroit style pizza, the big square slices? Well, if you're referring to the type they have at Buddy's, Buddy's is the only chain where I actually say, yes, they've got great pizza. I'll eat there over anything else there if they're available. Jerry Dodge, I've ridden at 120 a couple times. Yeah, we've talked about this before. The danger of high-speed driving, especially in Michigan or any place on a road, is the deer don't understand how fast you're coming when they're standing in your lane. And if you hit a deer at a $120, it's not going to turn out good for the deer. Dan Boyd, you'll need to fabricate the nose and the wing. No, they sell those aftermarket parts. You can buy them. You can buy the wing, the nose cone. And the window plugs can be put together pretty easily. People do it all the time. It's a very, very common thing now. Mark Miller, would you ever consider getting a V8 Beetle? I'm not a big fan of the Beetle. I mean, I respect them a lot. They're cool cars. I know people have had them, but I would not buy one now. Plus, it's a foreign car. It's a Volkswagen. David Peterson, what engine would your Daytona have? It would have a 426 Hemi, single 4-barrel. I would go with the configuration that would be correct. I mean, technically speaking, I could drop in like some kind of Hellcat motor or something. I'd want to put a 426 in it. The only question is what modifications I would make. Like, for instance, would it have a back seat? I mean, I could put in a roll cage and make it more NASCAR. So take out the back seat, put in a roll cage, put in 2 racing buckets, but then it wouldn't be that comfortable to drive. So I could put in some factory buckets, but then do I put in a back seat? That kind of thing. So Art S, hasn't the statute of limitations expired? That's a good question. Because there's an argument to be made that lawyers are supposed to be ethical at all times. And I'm not really worried about this, but theoretically, somebody come by and go, "Hey, there's a lawyer on YouTube, and he's bragging about speeding and breaking the speed limit in such a way it'd be a crime." So isn't he promoting criminal activity? Which, you know, Chris Podesta says hitting a moose at any speed would be a disaster unless you manage to go under him. In other words, if you hit him just right and cause him to go over. Oh boy. Sean M, would you ever buy an EV? I've got nothing against them. I just haven't bought one yet. I like the idea of having a car that I'd never have to put gasoline into. But then again, I also like the idea of a hybrid. So Chris Podesta says Montana or Wyoming. No daytime speed limit at all? Everywhere or just certain places? Kind of like the Autobahn, maybe? SKS Hugo did a 171 mile per hour ride along with a NASCAR driver in the mid 80s. I was 13. What type of vehicle was that? I mean, is that on a track in a NASCAR car? Charles Stevenson, a clone Dodge Daytona sounds cool. Would you put in a nice sound system? Believe it or not, I probably would think about going with the NASCAR dash with no sound system at all. I don't listen to music in my cars, almost never. Or if I did, I'd hide it probably. So I could use Bluetooth or something. Georgiana Thornton, please pray for the flood victims here in Texas. We've lost so many family and friends. Jerry Dodge, I'm writing a story based in modern times in 1967. In the 67, how popular was the 57 Bel Air? It would have been popular, but less expensive to buy. That's the thing. I had a 69 Dodge Charger in 79. I got it for $300. You probably get a 57 Chevy in 67 for a couple $100. You know, that kind of thing. Dan Boyd is a Hemi sound system. Yeah. A properly tuned Hemi, 426 Hemi, with just the right exhaust sounds like an outboard motor in a good way. 858 Bill, would you ever put a blower on a car? I would consider it, but then again, are we talking about sticking through the hood like a big old Roots? I'm not sure about that. Unless I built some outrageous car and decided to make it like this is designed to be outrageous. So Jay Klein, a $158 in the Autobahn, 165 in a NASCAR Cup car at the Kentucky Speedway. How big is the Kentucky Speedway? Is that a smaller track? Because 165 might have seemed really fast. I did 150 in a race car on a track, and the wall was going by like this, and boy, whoo, it doesn't even have to go that fast. Blue Unicorn says, I always wondered why people call scoops blowers. I've never heard, you mean like an air scoop or hood scoop? No. And I get people arguing about this too. There's a thing called a turbocharger and a thing called a supercharger. And a turbocharger works in essence off of exhaust gas, and a supercharger works off a belt drive, and often has a different sound because the whine the belt makes. And so one is a supercharger, one's a turbocharger. And I've heard people go, I got this car and it's supercharged and it's turbocharged. And there is a distinction, at least in America. So Dimebag Coin says dot, or it could be a period, I guess. Glenn Lagos is about a new car in 2023, and I've never had the radio on. Carl's Corner has a 1957 Chevy Bel Air, fully restored, for sale. What's it got in it? Like a old small block or something? I had a brother who had a 55 Chevy, and he used it as his daily driver from the mid 70s into the early 80s. He had parked in his front yard one day. He had a driveway next to his house. It was actually in his driveway, and a drunk driver, losing control of the car, went up on his lawn and just destroyed his car, bent it in half. And he says this drunk driver is staggering around the car, and my brother calls the police. The police show up and they're like, "What happens?" Like, I don't know, but yeah, we hit like, and he kept trying to make it sound like there'd been a driver in the other car. He didn't realize the car was parked in someone's yard. The car never drove again. Lewis Browning says Kentucky Speedway is an inactive intermediate speedway in Sparta, Kentucky. Yeah, so it's not a super speedway in the sense like over 2 miles in length measured from start to finish. 858 Bill is nothing like a supercharger whine and nothing like a turbocharger chip. I'll tell you right now, if I'm at the Woodward Dream Cruise or I'm just someplace and I hear a supercharger, that probably draws my attention faster than any other sound because I want to see what it's on. Like, oh my gosh, supercharger. MD Hofty with a super turbocharger be one that runs the exhaust and the engine. I don't think they've done that yet. I don't think it would make any sense. I think it would make a whole lot of sense. Tyler Durden says that my brother's car was, in fact, running when parked. Andreas checking in from Sweden. Hello. And hello to you, my friend. I appreciate that. Yeah, and don't forget Art S says compressor. Compressor spelled with a K. Compressor. Jay Nelson says Detroit style pizza is Wisconsin Widmer brick cheese. Wouldn't surprise me. I know that the cheese is what makes the Buddy's pizzas taste so good. I noticed that my dear friend Johnny Knoxville's not in the house today, but he's the guy who last time he passed through Michigan. And that's his nickname. That's not really who he is. He and I went out for Buddy's Pizza. And we went to the original Buddy's Pizza. Not one of the ones in the suburbs where I used to go. So 858 Bill, what about nitrous? Nox. Nos. Whatever they call it in the silly movies. Oh boy. Greg Lehto says the V90 from Volvo has a turbo and a supercharger called twin charged. Do they really? Seems like an extra lot of complications. But as pointed out previously, Greg Lehto is somebody who I never ask for a second opinion on because if he says it, it's correct. So Mark Miller says, have you heard anything negative about the 3.3 liter Ford engine? I'm considering looking at an F-150 with a 3.3. I've not heard anything, but I've not looked into it either. So, and Jaden Day says they've done it, but it's not super common twin charged, which is what Greg Lehto just said. Lewis Browning, what about nitromethane? Midwesterners checking out, but thank you for checking in, my friend. I appreciate that. Glenn Lagos says, I think Volvo semi trucks have compressors on their diesel engines. Yeah, the blowers on diesels are something they've had for a long time, I believe. Jay Klein says there's a Ford recall on the 3-liter turbo. Sassy Frassy, as always, I'm late to the party. Oh, boy. Old Paint 71 says there's also turbo supercharger combos that operate as geared superchargers until the exhaust turbo takes over, driving the compressor. Some locomotive engines use this configuration. That's the thing that blows my mind is those big industrial engines on locomotives or like ocean-going cargo vessels. The stuff that they put into those when you start reading the statistics on displacement and horsepower and torque, it's like a million foot-pounds of torque, you know? So Randy Veneer, until next time, Steve, and to you, my friend. Yeah, Jerry Dodge reminds us that the diesel locomotives don't directly drive the train. They run the generators that create the electricity that power the electric motors. Every time I see an the old school locomotives like in Petticoat Junction or something, and they go to fire up the train and get it moving from a dead stop, and you can just see it struggling just to get the wheels moving, you know. And it's like it always, I don't know why it always like freaks me out. Joel Jensen, I'll take an old muscle car over a new digital toy any day. Old school. John N. Jr. Pizzas are a main part of my diet. $1.25 at the Dollar Tree and a microwave. Microwaved $1.25 pizzas. I've never tried that before. I've occasionally gotten the single serve pizzas. I forgot who makes them, but I throw them in the oven for like 18, 19 minutes. I don't microwave them. But hey, they're probably good. Angela Band 1949 V8 diesel, two-stroke, Greyhound, best bus in the world. Oh boy. Jerry Dodge still have a small scale steam train at Cedar Point that I ride every now and then. It's so stressful how slow it gets moving. Oh, I've been to Cedar Point in a long time. I had a long discussion with some friends though who go there every single year, but they spend more time on the coasters. MD Hofsty says those are the Tostino's cardboard thick pizza. Okay. Yoda Beast saw a Unimog truck at Crater Lake last year serving as an epic off-road camp vehicle. Yeah, it's a military vehicle. You see them occasionally. I saw Unimog in traffic about a month or so ago, but you don't see them that often, but you do see them occasionally. I think they're expensive too, as far as military surplus goes. Jaden Day's got to head out. See y'all next week. Thank you for checking, my friend. Hey, Code Meester Beats. I'll take any old POS car over anything made after 2010. I don't need my car phoning the mothership. Yeah, you know something. It's got the point now. I've mentioned the auto stop start thing. It's got the point now. I've mentioned the auto stop start thing on my new Explorer. I hate it, and I've had several very very nice engineers send me some extremely well thought out emails saying, Steve, here's why we do it, and you got to understand, and they explain all of this, and they can answer every objection I have except for one. And when I'm in traffic and I sense that my car has died, my first reaction is, oh, my car died. And I'm never going to get over that. I've been driving for too many years in cars that stalled in traffic. And it was a bad feeling. And, it'd be like they put an alarm on your car that sounded like a police car behind you lighting you up. I said, oh, we're just trying to get your attention. Yeah, but I keep thinking I'm getting pulled over, I keep thinking my car is stalling. And I can tell myself, oh, it's just the auto stop start, but I just turned it off. So there you go. Tyler Durden doesn't like the auto stop start either. Leon, where's everybody going? Everybody's bailing at 220 for some weird reason. That's okay. That's okay. I'm glad you were here. Leon Anders is checking out. Eamon Sweeney says, I'm still here, Steve. Don't worry. Michael Hudson says, in the future, electric vehicles will turn off their fake engine noise when stopped at stoplights. Jim's camera at dawn says that auto stop start is turned off right after starting my truck. Yeah, it is for me too. But occasionally I forget. It's just stupid. Opinion Rat points out it's 220 right now, but it's 420 somewhere. Fatty Butterpants, start stop is for golf carts. Padres' auto start stop is being phased out. The question is, if they tell people they don't have to use it anymore, but it's already been incorporated in all this stuff, does that mean that they're going to actually remove it from cars or just leave it in and go, well, it's not required, but we're going to leave it in? So. Daniel Kester is here also. MD Hofstie says, just found out that the Isle of Man has no speed limits on some rural roads. For those wondering, it is located between Ireland and England. That's, of course, where they also have those really, really cool races on motorcycles. Perhaps the craziest racing you can see is on the Isle of Man with the motorcycle races. It's crazy what they do. Glenn Lego, I thought the government is canceling auto stop start. But like I said, it's always a question whether it's required by law or the companies just keep doing it for whatever reason. So we'll see. Yeah, Blue Unicorn says the auto start stop confused me for the longest time. I thought people were turning their cars off at stoplights, but that's another problem. So you have 50 cars in a row, and a light turns green. Every one of them has auto stop start activated, so they're all stopped. Every single car has got to fire up and drive, and adding a fraction of a second per car down that line has a ripple chain reaction, and it does make traffic go slower. I don't care what anybody says. Chief FC, anyone not here, raise your hand. Oh boy. Aaron, hey Steve, can I drive the Viper? No, I don't let other people drive the Viper. I occasionally let other people drive my Cobra because it's an automatic transmission, but not the Viper. The Viper's a clutch, and I always worry about anybody driving a clutch. I've only let, besides like mechanics or my friend Mark Lieberman drive it. One of my brothers has driven my Viper, and that's it. Just because, and the previous owner drove it. I'm just one of these guys when it comes to clutches. I worry about people and their ability to drive a clutch. Steve, what's with new cars when using a turn signal, the headlight turns off? That's been bothering me too. And I don't want to be that old man shaking his fist at clouds, but you know, modern cars, if you're facing somebody at a stoplight and they turn their right turn signal on, their right headlight from your viewpoint will often shut off. And it's designed to make the turn signal more apparent because it contrasts against dark as opposed to having a headlight right there. I don't think it's necessary, but it started happening a few years ago, and it's just annoying. David C. isn't a Viper what Kelsey Grammer flipped. Um, did he flip it or just crash it? Because I know that there's a woman in Michigan who flipped a Viper that was a press car. Which is it's like saying you flipped your house physically. It's very, very. JJ says it's not the headlight. Well, yeah. The prodigal stranger says he did in fact flip his Viper. So was it a hard top? It must have been, otherwise it'd kill you. Lewis Browning says the Fraser star wrecked his red Dodge Viper. Yeah. Oh boy. Prodigal stranger says I believe it was the hardtop, and he may have been intoxicated. That would lend itself to the equation, as we say. Daniel Kester says, notice that when I asked about getting a ride in your cars, I didn't ask to drive. Oh, no, I caught that. I would have told you I'm not letting you drive. Lewis Browning says he was drunk. Kelsey Grammer, really? Dan Boyd, he was intoxicated and went to rehab shortly thereafter. Um, the funny part is people keep referencing Cheers. He's also obviously on Frasier, which I watched a lot of. I watched Cheers back in the day also, but I enjoyed Frasier. Although Frasier started getting really crazy towards the end. So Tyler Durden, I was drunk the day my mom got out of prison. Oh, Robert Peralta says I live in San Francisco. Manual would be so hard to drive on the hills. Um, that's the thing. I'm good with the clutch. I've had many clutch vehicles, standard shift. My army truck, for instance, was a standard shift. My tow truck was a standard shift. So I can do that thing where you're on a hill and there's somebody riding your bumper behind you, and you wait for the car in front of you to move. I can do that all day long. But I know there's people out there who can't. So, oh boy. Blue Unicorn says that on Cheers, Frasier was a gruff curmudgeon, but on Frasier, he was more of a dandy. Yeah, and they did take that so far over the top with him and Niles. The I mean, it got to be absurd. But it was still funny because they invented their own little universe. Where guys be arguing about how something was shaved on the surface of their latte, that kind of thing. Lowell Riggs AM says, I'm sorry the Frasier reboot got canceled. It was one of the few shows I look forward to. I watched one episode, it didn't work for me. And I don't know if maybe I should have put in more time or something, but I watched one episode and it did not do it for me. MD Hofsty says it was Saturday, September 21st, 1996. He overcorrected and hit a dirt patch. The Internet Archive has a picture of the Viper. It is red. Cyberdoc says, Steve, if one cannot use the clutch on a hill without rolling backward, they can use the e-brake with their right hand to assist. Assuming that's where your e-brake is. On an army truck, the e-brake was to the left of the seat. It was a handbrake. But yeah, I suppose you can figure that out too. Yeah, James Schmelik says, don't forget that he also played Sideshow Bob Terwilliger, who had the tattoo, I believe it said die, Bart, die. No, it's German. The Bart the. Oh, the man speaks German. As you know, someone who speaks German couldn't possibly be evil. Oh boy. Aaron, so many wrecked Vipers. Yeah, the Viper is one of those things. As I like to tell people, Viper does not have anti-lock brakes or traction control or any of those. At least mine doesn't. Later years, who knows? Maybe. Um, and a lot of people underestimate how much power it's got, and they overestimate how well it handles curves if the brake if the back tires break loose. So 858 Bill says Kelsey Grammer was in a Star Trek Next Generation episode commanding the USS Bozeman. Blue Unicorn says the Niles guy was also Sideshow Bob's sidekick. I believe he was in at least one episode. Fatty Butterpants. Anti-lock brakes are of the devil. Of the devil. That's a saying I use occasionally. MH08, I was no fan of anti-lock brakes until I had to swerve around a woman who ran a red light in a snowstorm. I've had situations before where the anti-lock brakes worked because knowing I had them, I just stomped on the brake. I just said, "Stop me as much as you can," and it worked. Tyler Durden steamed hams. A classic but obscure episode of The Simpsons. Art S says, yes, Sideshow Bob is the best Simpsons character. He's certainly up there. Jeff N says communities who prevent posting comments on their Facebook posts also could be challenged for not allowing public comments at all. There's a difference, though. If they simply said we put up Facebook posts and don't allow anyone to comment, we don't even comment other than the post itself. I think they could get away with that because they're simply saying we don't want the post. They could say we just don't want the post to turn into, um, it's we're there's no ability to comment at all. Therefore, we're not discriminating against anybody in particular. But I don't know if that's been litigated or not. Dan Boyd, I don't know who my favorite Simpson characters would be. I said I've recently started rewatching them, and right around season 13 or 14, I start losing interest again. The best episodes are seasons 9 and 10. There are so many good episodes in there. I was rewatching them. I saved them all on my DVR. I've been watching them over and over again whenever I got time to kill. Oh my gosh, I love those. Michael Holland says that he used an awkward gerund. An emergency braking? There's nothing wrong with that. More people are going, what's a gerund? Oh boy. I saw an episode. I don't remember what the episode was, but I think it was Mr. Burns came into the bar and Mo turned to one of the regulars and goes, "Show him the exit." He goes, "This place has an exit." Rob Van Ham, Frank Grimes was great. You mean Grimy? Grimy? Bill McMahon, I don't like ABS, caused me to slide through a red light on a snowy, icy day in Minnesota. What would have happened if you'd behaved the exact same way without the ABS? Wouldn't the car have just spun around or something? Or because at least you had steering, right? Damien, Sideshow Bob episodes were probably my favorite, aside from the Halloween. You know, the Halloween episodes were classic. Some of the Halloween episodes, Kang and Kodos in particular, I love those. Don't don't blame me. I voted for Kang. Paul Harris now says, I saw what was on your wall. It was a smudge on my screen. Okay. Joe Masoli says, I love the Sam Crack cameo. And just so it's clear, I want to make sure this is clear. I shot that for him. He called me and said, can you, he goes, do you have like a 1 minute clip you can yank out of a video that explains what the lemon law is and why you wouldn't want to buy a used one? And I said, no, but I can put one together for you. And he goes, how fast can you get it to me? And I said, 1 minute clip, about 3 minutes. I jumped in front of the camera and did a quick thing in one take, cut it, and sent it to him. But he told me specifically, I'm going to put it in the middle of a video where I'm going to say, I bought a used lemon. Are there any risks here? Well, Steve Lehto says this. And then after it was over, he goes, oh, shut up. but so he told me he's going to do that. And I was fine with it. I had some people go, "Oh my gosh, he's making fun of you." No, 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 no. Sam and I are friends. Sam was one of the first people to contact me and say, "Hey, do you want to be on my show?" And at the time, I had very few followers compared to him, and I'm like, "Yes, I'd love to be on your show." And it did wonders for my channels. I love Sam. Prodigal Stranger. No, they screwed this all up. Works on contingency? No. Money down. Lionel Hutz. Uh, Even lawyers will tell you that Lionel Hutz was one of the greatest characters of all time. And sadly, of course, Phil Hartman was murdered, and he was that voice along with a lot of other voices. And so they retired the character. Aaron, what about Louis Rossman? What about him? I've been on his show. I've been on a bunch of other people's shows. I don't do a lot of that only because I'm always worried about sound connection and stuff with this current setup I've got. But I've been on his show. I've been on. I always get mental blanks, but Jr. I miss Phil. He was a great guy. Yeah, and Phil Hartman was so good. He was in news radio, of course. He was on Saturday Night Live, but the guy could do imitations that were so good, so good. Damien, hi, I'm Troy McClure. You may remember me from such self-help films as Smoke Yourself Thin and Get Confidence, stupid. He also did the one Firecrackers, Nature's Silent Killers. Blue Unicorn, I saw you in Good Luck America. That was a while ago. How's Rick doing over there? Oh, it was a long time ago. Yeah, Prodigal Stranger, Phil Hartman's Frank Sinatra was spot on. Glenn Lago, Mel Blanc was a great imitator. Leanne, Phil Hartman was Captain Carl on Pee Wee's Playhouse. Yeah, and there's a documentary out right now about Pee Wee Herman on, I don't know if it's HBO or something. 2 parts. They spent a lot of time interviewing Pee Wee Herman, and they didn't know it when they're interviewing him, but he had terminal cancer. He knew it. They didn't know it. They interviewed him and got tons of interviews with him and his friends and coworkers and all that stuff. And then he had a bit of a falling out, I think, with a filmmaker, and he actually stood them up on the final day they were in a shoot. And then he called the guy and left a message, or he may have recorded a message and sent it to him, where he basically said, you know, something to the effect, "I'm a little worried about how I'm going to look in your documentary," but anyway, he then passed away. And so the filmmaker had this footage of all these interviews that Pee Wee Herman had done. And his story is absolutely amazing for so many different reasons. I did not know that he had appeared on the Gong Show as 2 or 3 different people. And I remembered some of the characters he played on the Gong Show, not realizing ever that that was Pee Wee Herman before he was Pee Wee Herman. He was simply, Paul Rubens, but he was doing a character as a comedic thing. And so it's like, what? And so you've got to watch the documentary if you have any interest at all, because he's such a fascinating guy. Yeah, Aaron says Pee Wee was great in the movie Blow, and that's one of those good things where a lot of people don't stop to think about. But he actually appeared in some movies later, and oh, Dan Boyd, yeah, Pee Wee Herman was on The Dating Game, and the funny thing about it is that on The Dating Game he went in character. He actually said Bachelor number 3 is Pee Wee Herman, and she picked him. Padre Paul Rubin was the hamburger guy in a Cheech and Chong movie. Yeah, he was also in a Cheech and Chong movie. Brian Ellis is the cartoon where Mel Blanc voiced Daffy impersonating Bugs and vice versa, and take was amazing. I've also seen Hank Azaria talking and changing voices on the fly. It's amazing how you have to have a brain that operates that way. And I did not know that he's in a Cheech and Chong movie until I saw it in the documentary. And if I'd seen the movie, I didn't catch it at the time, or it didn't sink in. Carl's Corner, the dating game where serial killers go for the next victim. The dating game actually had a really weird past to it, because a bunch of famous and infamous people were on it at one time or another. So, yeah, MHOA, the unknown comic, uh, rose to fame on the Gong Show. Oh boy, yeah, the Gong Show is weird. It's even weirder in the fact that the first year it actually had a host, and then Chuck Barris just said, "Screw it, I'll host it myself." And he had very little business being in front of a camera, but then it worked because he was so out of place out there. So yeah, Leanne says unknown comic had the paper sack on his head. And most of his jokes were stupid, but they're made funny by the fact that he was out there with a bag on his head. Oh yeah, MD Hofstein, Paul Rubens' first major role after this, after his was the movie Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Yeah, he played a really bad guy, a really bad guy. And you wouldn't recognize him unless it was, in other words, it was just on Buffy. By the way, I actually am a fan of Buffy. It's been a few years since I watched it, but I have seen every single Buffy, once more with feeling, many times, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, despite the oddity of what the show is about, is brilliantly written. The characters are done so well, and so I am McNathan, Gene, the dancing machine. And Carl's Corner also mentions Gene, the dancing machine. Steve says, I remember a movie with the unknown comic. Was he playing a character with a bag on his head? Michael Hoyland says Joss Whedon is the GOAT. Firefly is one of my favorite things. Yeah, the amount of work he put into that, and it shows you if you're a workaholic and you have complete control of something and you know what you're doing, you make it very, very consistent, very, very good. So Kelly Smith loved J.P. Morgan. I never knew what she was famous for other than as being like a judge or a guest on game shows. Did she ever do any movies? I mean, I could look it up, but I'm a busy man. Jim's Camera at Dawn, Firefly is a great series. I've never seen it. I've never seen it. There's all kinds of spin-offs and other stuff that have happened out there that I've not followed. And that's one, but somehow I don't know how I got into Buffy years ago. And then saw them all. Tyler Kirk is checking in from Kentucky. Hi, Steve. Watched your stuff for years. Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Mark Miller, JP Morgan was kind of cute. Yeah, she was. I don't know what made her famous to what qualified her to be a judge on the Gong Show. I remember one time they had as a judge the Starland vocal band. Like the entire band was a judge. Damien says JP flashed the camera and got banned from the Gong Show. Yeah, you always wonder about stories like that because I don't think that show is live. So obviously they could just cut it, but Aaron says, yeah, Kentucky is home of the Corvettes falling into the ground. Yeah, I drove by the Corvette place on my way back from Nashville a couple weeks ago. Didn't have time to stop though, but I did see it. The Prodigal Stranger. Do you really need any qualifications to judge the Gong Show? Well, that's always the question because they have judges. I think they had room for 3, and so if you're going to be on the show, you're going to get publicity out of it. So it would be a coveted thing. So how do they choose? And that to me was always part of the goofiness of that show was, our judges. It's like Jamie Farr from MASH, J.P. Morgan, and the Starland Vocal Band, which even back then we knew they were going to be a one-hit wonder at best. Dan Boyd, Afternoon Delight, came out when I was in 4th grade. Glenn Lago wasn't J.P. Morgan a financier? Better. There's a whole Morgan family. The House of Morgan they refer to. Financier, investment banker. There's J.P. Morgan, Jack Morgan. And they would call them slightly different things. But there was the J.P. Morgan, who is credited for, among other things, like saving the U.S. economy a couple of times. Fatim Butterpants says the grand prize on the Gong Show is $516.32, which at the time was SAG scale pay for 1 day's work. Carl's Corner, Ruth Buzzy. Was Ruth Buzzy ever a judge on the Gong Show? Oh, I'm all out of fluids. The show is going to grind to a dry halt. Jerry Dodge. The nights. Waking up in the middle of the night to MASH playing on the TV. Yeah, now it's MASH in the middle of the day on MeTV, I think. I can't watch past season 1 or 2. It after you've seen it so many times, it really starts to fall apart. Jason Brindamar says it's deadlocked. 0-0 in the 5th inning right now with the Tigers. Kelly Smith says Ruth Buzzy was Hollywood Squares. Again, that's a show I never watched all that often, but there'd always be like 1 or 2 people who are on it all the time. And then people do things like they decorate their squares and stuff. And of course, there's the famous episode with Gilbert Gottfried. You fool! Oh boy. If you know what I'm talking about, look up Hollywood Squares, you fool. Yeah, D Wood reminds us the Popsicle Twins were a hit on the Gong Show. And acts like that would either get gonged instantly or they'd win. And again, there was no predicting that. Carl's Corner, Paul Lind. Oh, Glenn Lagos says Ruth Buzzy was on Rowan and Martin Laughing. You know what's sad is Rowan and Martin Laughing was a little bit before my time, largely because my mom thought the show was stupid and she wouldn't let us watch it. And me and my brothers kind of liked watching it. I don't know why, but if she knew we were watching it, she'd tell us we couldn't watch it. And I was kind of little, so. Alexander Gunaka votes against Gilbert Gottfried as being a funny person. Jerry DeMoss, have you ever forgotten where Ben was? Oh, I've twice I've had trouble. One time I had Ben up against the wall and he slid behind my bookcase, and I didn't think that was possible. And about half an hour later, I'm looking and I see it, but my bookcase weighs like 1,000 pounds because all the books that are in it. And another time, I'd slid it between some books, and actually, I remember I went and pulled the screen grab up from the day before, and I blew it up really, really big, and I was scanning it, and I finally spotted it. I'm like, oh. And it turns out if I was standing up, I couldn't see it the way it was. I had to be down at exactly camera level. So that's happened before. DePaul 31, very interesting, but stupid. Laughing. Jim's camera at Dawn laughing even had Nixon making a cameo. Sock it to me. Sock it to me. Dan Boyd, Roy Clark was a great guitar player. Yeah. Don't forget. I mean, I know musicians who watched that show. Buck Owens and Roy Clark, man, those guys were good. The show was hit or miss, depending. Talk about a low budget show. I've actually seen like the behind the scenes about them making that show, and it's remarkable how inexpensive it was. MHOH says if you lose Ben, look at the comments. No, the problem here is that I lost Ben before I'd put the video up. In other words, I was shooting 2 videos, and I now let's see. Somehow, all I know is that I couldn't do that for some reason. But anyway, D Wood says, but Buck Owens played the same 4 songs over and over. Well, all I know is I'm not a musician, so I can't say, but people I know who are musicians, guitar players, have told me they consider those guys both very talented. Yeah, Daniel Kester says on Hee Haw, they did like the entire season in 2 weeks. It might not have taken them that long. Art S says Gilbert Gottfried is polarizing. To put it mildly, yes. Jerry Dodge, can you make a new video about the origins of the $100 bill? No, sorry. It riles people up. Steve, is that the same Ben? It's not the same Ben from day one, and the reason is that I had been doing that for a little while, and I had somebody offer to buy it from me for $100. I said, "Why would you want to do that?" And they said, "Well, I just think it'd be funny." They mailed me a $100 bill. I could have just kept it, but I didn't. I mailed them the one that I had in my set, and I took the one they sent me and I put it on the set. So it's the second $100 bill, but there's always been one on the set. There was 1 or 2 times where it's not terribly visible. And I will then put the end screen and show where it is. And I'll do that. So JR, nah, you never post videos that rile people up, do you? I try not to. I try not to. David C. Plot twist: new bill is counterfeit. No, I've got a stack of the fake movie bills, but I don't use them. I use a real bill. Michael Hoyland says, I'm exuberantly proud of my Ben spotting skills. Oh, boy. What you going to do? Well, JR says, but people do seem to get riled up even though you try not to. Yeah, but there's a big difference. You can't help but rile up somebody. But when you have a bunch of people get riled up, then you got to look at it and go, is this worth it? Yeah, Jay Klein says, just look in the comments. 25 people will tell you where Ben is. But I still get people emailing me, go, Steve, I found Ben. What do I win? And I'm like, didn't you notice that 75 people spotted him before you did? Like, what do you think you're going to win? Mark Miller says I'm more of a content person than a Ben person. I occasionally forget to move him because I'm more worried about content also. Dan Boyd, I think I've been the first to spot Ben once. The best thing ever is people go, I'm first. And there's 4 people above him who got there before they did. So, by the way, I do have to point out that I can't reach it from here. Somebody sent me a Hertz quality control patch. It's real. And they said, can you imagine? There actually was somebody whose job was quality control at Hertz. So I put the patch in the set. And luckily, I've had people point out and said they saw it. So, blah, blah, blah. I come for the content and stay for the comments. Chief FC, I watch my daughter. She loves to spot Ben. Jason Brindamar says, everybody don't forget to hit likes real quick. We're at 218 or so. That's pretty good. Yeah, David P., I saw the Hertz patch and laughed out loud. Oh, well, Bill 57, I stopped looking for Ben because it was distracting me from the story. Yeah, my whole point was that that's why I've got all the junk behind me. See, I have something else to look at besides me. So anyway, we are past 3:00. I'm going to shut it down now. Had a great time. Thank you for joining me. I will see you next weekend like I always do. And of course, during the week and then on Fridays on my other channel. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.